We should all understand the fact that energy markets throughout the world are highly regulated, and there's only one regulator in one market that is issuing licenses for the participants of those markets. And I would like to talk about three of those types of licenses. The DSO, as Armand mentioned, it will be an opportunity to mount meters that measure directly on blockchain the quantity of the consumption or the production. But in order to achieve that, for the DSOs, it will imply a certain amount of costs, and I presume that they will not be very eager to pay that cost, so the regulator would be the one that would make those things happen throughout the market. The second type of license that the regulator is issuing is the trading license. And if you are asking any trader in any country of the world if they would like to trade peer-to-peer, they will mostly surely answer yes. So they are more than eager to trade peer-to-peer, no matter who you're asking. Why they are not trading peer-to-peer? Because when you're trading within a market, you need to trade based on those regulations and the market rules, and you cannot trade outside of the market. So that means that the regulator also needs to regulate that aspect in order to be able to trade peer-to-peer. And the third license that I would like to talk about is the supplying license. Because Armand mentioned about RED, and it's obvious it's a big thing at this summit. Why would the supplier want to trade, to allow the consumer and the producer trade directly? Because basically this is the purpose of the supplier, to interconnect those two participants. And also one aspect that we should all understand is the fact that neither the consumer and the producer are not interested in making their lives harder, but easier. Mm-hmm. So if we would introduce a peer-to-peer trading between the end consumer and the producer, that needs to be automatic, but in the same time needs to obey the legislation that that transaction happens into. And the way that you're doing this is by providing two layers. The layer that Armand already mentioned, it's a platform where you virtually transact energy between the consumer and the producer, and the second layer where you make all these things happen in the real world, in the regulated world, and transpose all that peer-to-peer transaction that happen in the blockchain, you transpose that within real market and actually make those transactions as they should be in the real market, in the regulator. So now to answer your question, the legislation has great weight to blockchain in energy, and the solution, the temporal solution for this example would be what RED platform is doing, but the long-term solution would be that the regulator to move the market in the blockchain.
Yes. The regulation for prosumers.
The regulated should deregulate the markets and move them towards the blockchain. So that will be the longer term vision and solution.
Thank you, Mihai.
Can I say something? Because Mihai asked a very, very important question here. Mihai asked, why would suppliers, which are usually viewed as middlemen, would allow consumers and producers to trade directly? Why would they want to lose money? Right?
Yeah.
This is the question.
Yes, and it's a very good question.
But I also want to ask a question. Why do suppliers want to keep consumers and producers captives, in captivity? I think this is a wave and a trend that suppliers cannot stop. I think people want freedom of choice. And I think instead of creating friction and trying to keep them captives, I think a much a much honest approach, a better approach, is to evolve. The supplier can evolve from, the supplier's role is much more complex than being a middleman. It's the central counterparty for the entire energy system. And this is a discussion for later, but I think that the supplier can evolve into a supplier of a marketplace, okay? From the perspective of a retail supplier that is competing with legacy integrated energy companies, I can tell you this is a very hard job to do because the margins are very small and you're usually competing with gigantic companies in the market and you're trying to add value for your consumers while still maintaining financial health, so to say. But the real value here is the value perceived by the consumer and how the consumer feels. If the consumer feels that he has transparency over all the processes, he has transparency over his metering, he has transparency over his invoicing, he has transparency over his billing, and if you win his heart, then he's going to stay your consumer for 100 years. Right now, if you look on all the modern deregulated markets, consumers are switching suppliers each year. The supplier is paying brokers to acquire consumers. The cost of acquiring the consumer is more or less 1 or 2 years of his margin with that consumer. So the process is inefficient right now. Nobody gains from the process right now. And I think we have to view things differently. I think we have to view things from the perspective of the end user, of the consumer. I think we have to focus on his needs. I think all of us want transparency in relation with any kind of supplier, be it energy supplier, financial supplier, public services supplier. We want transparency.
And trust.
We want to know what is behind the process, the service, because if we know, we can be involved. And if we can be involved, you can have our energy, our feedback, that can help you turn your product into a better product. So I think companies today should try to grow their product around the community of users. I think that's the best way to grow a healthy product, which works both ways, for the consumer and for the company.
Okay, please.
Just 10 seconds, if I may add something. I'm not personally too worried about the future of suppliers, to be honest, because I think there is still, for years to come, there will be room for them in the market. I think what this technology can help is for some standardized products at least, yeah, to make a more direct link between the producer and the consumer. However, when we talk about sophisticated products, products which imply a certain degree of complexity, here you would still need the expertise of an energy supplier in order to purchase such products. Therefore, we may see a specialization of the suppliers in the future with the introduction of this technology. They will become more specialized and they will be able to provide value for certain type of products to the
Yes, but